Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I am Jillian Aurora and I'm here with my co-host today, Marie Wallace.
Good morning.
And we are super excited to be here with you as usual. So I just want to first say thank you to everyone who's joining us, whether you're on Facebook Live, which we do this every Thursday morning, or you can find us on Spotify or iTunes or Podbean. And you can also join our Facebook group where we have discussions and you can see old content. You can find us there at facebook.com/groups/Braveheart Conversations. So definitely check that out. And I really appreciate when you guys engage with us and give us questions because we will talk about them live. So anyway, our topic for the day, we're really excited to talk about bravery in telling your story. I think that it can be really challenging to tell our stories, even though they're our most powerful gifts. We came to this planet with something to master, something to learn, and that is what unfolds in our story. And then a lot of times we hold shame or embarrassment or feeling the need to protect people, and so we don't share. And I think that that ends up really being a detriment to all of us, because when we share our story, we actually free a lot of people, because we all hold some shame around our stories and our experiences. And so when we have the courage and the bravery to share, other people go, oh my gosh, yeah, me too. So, Marie, this is a big one that I know you've talked about a lot. I remember taking a class of yours years ago in storytelling, and in that one we were writing, which is really important. I love writing. That was definitely the first way I was able to tell my story. So I kind of want to talk about the steps that it takes to tell our story and how that picture unfolds, because it's not like you just wake up one day and you are brave enough to share all of your story with the world. So I want to talk about why it's important, because a lot of times we justify telling ourselves it's not really that important, and all the reasons we give ourselves not to share our story, and then how we can start telling our story
and unfolding that. That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Marie, tell me more about telling your story and what that process looked like for you. And then I want to hear too, because I think you have some really unique ways of telling stories and getting people to warm up through writing.
Okay, so I didn't realize the importance of it until probably 5 years ago. I did a lot of writing, so I told my story to myself a lot. And then someone asked me to say my story out loud, and I freaked out. And I go, I can't do that. And it was probably more than that, because now it's probably longer than that. It's been 6 years, because I was at the time doing a lot of work with my dad, and that's where the stories were coming from, and a lot of childhood trauma. And the worry is, how do you navigate that and still honor the people in it and not, bring up the ugly stuff? And there's just no way around it. You have to tell the ugly part. One, it freed me, and I didn't realize it until I actually voiced it and said it out loud in the group. And everybody's like, oh, because sometimes we protect. Well, one, I was protecting me. One, I was protecting my dad, all the people that I was protecting. But two, being able to say those things out loud and get rid of the shame and the guilt and the worry actually allowed others to open up. It allowed me to open up and get that out. Because, back to the Brene Brown quote, this blame and shame and all of that, hiding gives, just makes it fester. But the other part was it freed other people to share their story. It also said, I'm not alone. Because when other people come up to you and go, I had no idea. And then it's also inspiring. It's inspiring to others that you overcame some really big things, because otherwise everybody makes up a story about you. If you're not telling your story, someone else is. And it's usually not true. So
that's a great point. Yeah. I know for me, I started sharing my story safely in an anonymous group.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I was in Al-Anon. Next month, it'll be 9 years. So that recovery group has been really instrumental in my life. And I was able to really safely share, not even just after my story, after things happened, but actually current events. I was able to share in a space that was really, really helpful for me, really instrumental, because when we bottle all that up and we isolate, we feel alone. We feel like nobody else is experiencing this.
They don't understand.
Yeah, we think that people won't understand. But you know what? Now, as I very publicly share my story, there was a lot of pushback, and we'll get into some of the pushback in a minute, but I cannot count the number of times that women have said, I feel like you're speaking the words, before I've shared them, or you're speaking the thoughts in my head, or how did you know, or he says exactly those things. And we realize that we aren't as unique. Our story isn't as unique as we thought. And so it really discharges a lot of that pain and shame that we hold around it. Oh my gosh, somebody talked to her the same way. Because there's a lot of shame for me in like the verbal abuse that happened. There was a lot of shame in allowing someone to talk to me that way.
Yeah.
And so when I could own that, and there was a lot of shame, so part of my story is going back, right? I moved everything out, and then I moved everything back in. It was like, it was a lot of work. And then I felt like a fool. But today I'm really grateful I came back, because I can relate to so many women who go back, and the average number is like 7 times that women go back.
That's a lot.
So I get to relate with that. And I didn't see that at the time, but now I can understand. I can empathize with people's embarrassment and their shame. And so what I want you all to hear is, there are lots of people impacted by my story. You may be impacted by my story. You may be impacted by Unapologetic, or by Braveheart Conversations, or any of the work that we put out. And I want you to connect here that if I had never been able or willing to share my story, you wouldn't have experienced that impact. And the same is true for you. So when you share your story, you will impact so many more people. Because, and I'm going to do it again, I'm going to share a Brene Brown quote, but vulnerability is the last thing that we want to share in ourselves, but the first thing we look for in everyone else. And so remember that because I was vulnerable, and you're super attracted to that vulnerability and my authenticity, the same is true for you. When you expose that in you free other people, you impact other people, just like you've experienced when Marie tells her story or I share my story. That impact is really, really huge. So,
and I want to add that collectively, collectively, as we share our stories, that's going to impact the world. It ripples out, and the more we speak up and the more we talk about what's going on, then we can start stopping some of these systems that keep that in place. All that guilt and shame, and it holds us down and holds us back, and then we can't progress as a people. So the more of we share collectively and get it out there, and let others feel empowered by those stories or inspired by those stories, because sometimes us telling our stories inspires people to take action, and more that's just going to grow us as a collective. So I just wanted to add that part.
I love that. That's so important, because the reason why I feel like my story impacts a lot of women is because, it starts to crumble those old patriarchal beliefs and programming, and they start connecting the dots, and they're like, oh, this is why that happened, and this is what I'm experiencing. And that's what happens when we share our stories.
And there is that part. I want to go back to what you said. We do feel like we've been duped by the system. We're like, how did I not see that? How did I choose this person to be in my life. Now we know, we go back to that and we've talked about that, but in the beginning you go, how could I have not seen this? And or someone else has gone along and said, what, I told you you shouldn't have, or you shouldn't have been with this person, and then you realize that it was part of the learning and the growing. However, at the time you just feel, like you said earlier, foolish, duped, all those words that bring about shame, and it's not about that. We chose those people to grow in our lives and to expand, and there's no shame in that. Except if we're not pulling ourselves out of the pattern, and then we might go, oh, okay. But for some reason, we go back. And sometimes we go back to make sure that we're really wanting to shut that door, right? Like, did I really want to shut that door? Oh, yes, I really wanted to shut the door. So,
yeah. There's no mistake in your past and in your story. That's what we also get to own, and that's actually a huge part of like the program that I run, Unapologetic. We really talk about self-forgiveness and making peace with your past, and that it's so important that you see why you made the decisions you did, and that it was about mastery, it was about learning, and your soul chose those things for a reason. And I don't want to get into all of that today, but it is a big piece of your story, because when you have shame around why you made those choices, it's going to be very difficult to actually share your story, which is freeing
or overcome it,
for you and for everyone else. Yeah, absolutely. I find that it's huge. If I can't look back with trust in the choices I made, I will have a very hard time trusting myself in the future. And self-trust is so key. I cannot stress that enough. Self-trust is so key to not repeating toxic relationships and patterns. You must be able to trust your inner boss, your intuition.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the barriers to telling our story. What are some of the resistance, the things that it's the pushback, and I'll kind of go into my experience, and then you can talk about some of the resistance for you. So I know a really big piece of resistance for me was I was afraid of protecting other people's reputation, and I was really torn because I knew that the story that I had and the impact that I could make was really big, but I also felt like, well, I don't want to share somebody else's story. I don't want somebody else's reputation to be ruined. I felt like I didn't want to damage relationships. I didn't want people to view me a certain way. Those were really big pushbacks. Those were barriers for me. And then the scariest one, the major story that I share with you all now, my passion really comes from healing codependency. And so I share a lot about leaving my marriage, and I share a lot about just the codependent patterns that played into that. And I will definitely share the biggest fear that I had in sharing that story was from him. It was danger to myself, my own reputation. There were some threats. There were not physical threats, but there were legal threats and financial threats, and just a lot of bullying. And I knew that was a probable thing that would happen if I started sharing my story. And so I want to speak to some of that because I know some of our listeners are women who have experienced similar situations, and it's very, very intimidating to speak the truth or to even acknowledge. Sometimes this is a piece too. I really for a long time minimized what I went through. Like, it's not that big of a deal,
Other people have overcome more.
Right. It wasn't physical. What do I have to complain about?
Well, that's programming too. I remember that. Like, just because he didn't hit me meant that I should stay. And emotional abuse wasn't even talked about then. And all the emotional abuse that just did more damage than physical abuse. And yeah, you just can't erase those. And the power of other people, I think that's what I worried about. The power and the money of other people over me taking taking things that were very valuable to me, that I might lose my family, that I might lose my home, that I might lose relationships that I really adored and loved. So those were all very big power plays that were brought up, and I might lose my job. There was one situation where my job was threatened because of all the people that were involved in that particular situation. And you know, I was a young single mom. I was worried about losing a job at that time. So there's all these people who have the power plays over you, and they use those to hold you down and suppress you.
Yeah.
And you believe them.
Yeah.
It's so real to you. So we don't want to minimize that part, because inside it's so real to us, all that we stand to lose when we do that. So.
Well, and I actually want to bring up too that some people will say, oh, it's just fear, it's not real. However, like after doing so much studying in domestic violence, our intuition is the number one indicator of danger. Mm-hmm. And so when I faced those fears that my former spouse would retaliate, that was real. It wasn't just something up in my head. That was something that was a very real thing that could happen to me. And women do experience that. Women do experience severe physical harm and emotional harm and legal and all those things. Mm-hmm. It does happen. And so my mindset when I chose to tell that particular story, because that was a big one for me, when I chose to tell that particular story, my mindset was, you can fucking take it all. I will lose it all to tell my story, because the truth matters to me that much, and I realize the value in telling my story that much, and I am no longer going to be controlled by this person. That was my mindset. It wasn't that, it's not realistic. It's just, I need to tell myself I'm wrong for having these fears. No, those fears were valid. It was more that feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. Because in the end, the truth will prevail. Mm-hmm. It does. Because you're holding on to that authenticity. Mm-hmm. You're holding on to what you truly believe in, and you're holding on to what really is important in that situation. You may lose it all, but you have to be willing to go there. Yep. Otherwise, you won't have that freedom. And then what good is it being in bondage anyway? Right?
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I was just watching a documentary about, what's his name? The pedophile, Epstein.
Oh, okay.
And it was...
I was like, which one?
Which one? Yeah. I'm being very
one in the news recently, yes.
But it was so moving to me that all of those women who were abused were willing to stand up and speak against someone so powerful and someone so intimidating, and to be shut down over and over and over. To me, that's so much strength to be able to stand up to that and to still say, no, this is what happened to me. And because, then this is what we get to hear, is because each of those victims stood up and because they were
stopped
brave,
him.
yeah, eventually it all crumbled. It took a long time, way longer than it should have. It's maddening how long it took for that to crumble, but it crumbled because of each voice. It crumbled. And that is powerful. So when we say that our voice doesn't matter and we're telling ourselves it's not that big of a deal, look at some of those more extreme examples and you will see how it is a big deal. It's such a big deal.
And the ripple effect from there, it takes those voices and then collectively it's building, right? And now more and more women are speaking up because they're going, oh, I'm not the only, going back to the other one, I'm not the only one. There are other women out there that need to hear my story so that they will step up.
Absolutely. And I want to go back a little bit into one of the voices that says you can't do this, is that whole, saving somebody else's reputation thing. And something that was very valuable is when I did start sharing my story, I had a coach. And I had a really powerful coach that was willing to fill in all of those fear spots for me and to say, like, you got this. You're a warrior, you're a justice warrior, and you tell your story if you want to. If you don't want to, great, but do it if you want to, you know. Don't let someone else diminish you. And that was so huge for me. I really needed that cheerleader. But I do want to talk about the reputation piece where I so badly wanted to just share my story, right? Because that's what we're told for the longest time. You know, you just share your story, don't share others. And then it felt so inadequate in that particular situation.
And piecemealed.
How do I share my story without sharing something about this person? And everybody has to find their own way through that journey. I did the best that I could to always come from a place of love. It was not coming from revenge or being vindictive. It came from a place of love. It came from a place of healing. And it is truth-telling. I did my best to avoid sharing names or things that weren't valuable to the point I was trying to make. So you get to be really honest with yourself about what your motivation is for sharing your story. If you're sharing your story because you're trying to get back at somebody or because you're trying to punish them, like,
it's only going to make you look bad.
Hold up and acknowledge where, you know, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? Because our stories are powerful. They are meant to inspire and help heal other people and free other people. When you stay in that alignment and you have that motivation, you come from such a place of power. But if you're coming from punishment and revenge, everyone will see it and they will turn you right off, because that is not helpful. It's just not helpful. So we get to be really honest with our own motivation and sharing our story. The thing is with reputation, if someone was abusive and someone behaved badly, they don't get to be protected. They just don't. They don't deserve protection. So if that's a hang up for you, remember your secrecy and your silence actually perpetuates that cycle.
Especially with that particular person, because they'll keep on going and doing it because they've gotten away with it over and over again.
Yeah, yep. So their reputation doesn't get to be protected if they behaved shitty. Mm-hmm. If they didn't want you to talk about them badly, they should not have behaved badly. So, you know, we get to own both of that. What is my motivation? And then what is the truth? Am I honoring the truth? Mm-hmm. Because it is okay. It is perfectly okay to say this person was abusive. This person harmed me. That is okay. That is actually good. In order for even your abuser to heal, there must be accountability. Accountability brings healing. Truth brings healing. When we are keeping their secret, we are actually perpetuating the abuse and their own pattern of abusing and even like their self-destruction. Because even in their own abusive patterns, it's not only harmful for you, it's harmful for them. Nobody's happy, nobody wins in that situation. So by you telling your truth, you are healing and actively being a catalyst of healing for everyone involved. So that
you
reputation.
Want to see what we got?
Yes, let's do that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Marlene, I've had the experience of sharing hurt, shame, and then the person judged me, and then I crawled back into my shell. Hell yeah. Okay, so you're going to face some judgment, and you may face losing some people. So I know when I started sharing my story about my divorce, I knew that some people really would not like me sharing the secrets, because in some people's worldview and the old programming, it tells us the ultimate betrayal is telling secrets. It tells us the ultimate betrayal is actually talking about the behavior instead of the actual bad behavior. And it's a really screwed up paradigm, and I choose not to operate in that paradigm anymore. To me, truth gets to be told. And the ultimate betrayal is the bad behavior, not the telling of it. So I get to talk about bad behavior. I don't keep secrets for people. I don't keep secrets for abusers. I'll tell on myself. I believe wholeheartedly that healing comes from transparency on every angle. So yeah, there's gonna be judgment. I lost friends. I lost people when I told my story. But the lie that people will tell you is that when you tell your story, that it's a lonely path. And the thing is, you will lose people, but you will attract your tribe. And I have more friends. I have deeper relationships than I've ever had in my life. More genuine relationships, because I cleared, I purged, I got rid of anybody that did not align. Like, I spoke my truth and they fled. If they didn't want to be there, they didn't want to hear it, like, they left.
Exactly.
I didn't have to kick them out. I just started speaking my truth and started living in my transparency, and they took themselves out. So
it's truly how you get the better relationships, the deeper relationships, the ones that are truly those that are there for you and for that meaningful relationship. So yeah, it's worth it.
Yep. And the judgment that comes is not, it's not saying that they're bad or you're bad. It's just saying this isn't in alignment, and that's okay. Today I celebrate that. If I have an epiphany and I get some information that someone is not in alignment with me, I get to celebrate that. Oh, yay. Okay, well, this person just isn't a fit. They're going to go find someone that's a better fit for them, and that's going to make space in my world for somebody who's a better fit for me. So it's not that you're bad and I'm good. It's that we're not aligned, we're different, and that's okay.
It's okay.
We have spent a lot of our life trying to fit people into our space that don't fit, and trying to accommodate ourselves to them. So I know this is
it's a great one. No,
me.
it's awesome. No, it's really it's empowering for people to know that it's okay to tell your story.
Absolutely.
So telling them all the things.
Yeah.
So get out there, share your story.
Please do. It will help us all. Do you
Well,
have
it's
anything?
inspiring to us too. So.
Absolutely. I am empowered when I see somebody else sharing their story. It builds me up. It lights my fire. And I think that it's the same for everyone. Marie, do you have anything to add about sharing your story? No? Okay. We got one more comment. The words, I can never say that. I'm not going to butcher it. But I know it means the Hawaiian phrase.
The ho'oponopono?
Yeah.
Ho'oponopono. I think
yes.
Yes.
It's, what is it? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. And actually, it doesn't matter the order, but there are songs on YouTube that help you do it in certain orders. So it's whatever order feels good for you. Usually I start with I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you.
Yeah.
But it has been in many, many orders, whatever order feels good for you. If starting and blessing with I love you works for you, because sometimes that situation needs to be blessed first. I love you. Then you can go with I'm sorry. Because sometimes we have to own our part in that thing too. Please forgive me as well. So I forgive you, but please forgive me as well, because my part in that situation. So,
yeah. I love
Thanks for bringing that up.
It honors the accountability for each person, and thank you. I always love thank you, even starting with thank you. The gratitude.
Thank you for bringing it up.
This person is a lesson. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for being there for me.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for sharing that. That was a great reminder. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And thank you all so much for being here today. This was a fun conversation. Again, we do this every week. So Thursday mornings, you can join us live on our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Braveheart Conversations. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. And if you would like to ask us any questions, or if something came up today that you felt like was a challenge for you and you just want to discuss more about it, we'd love to hear from you. You can email me at defytheaverage@gmail.com or
Marie@mariesgold.com. Or if you have some questions or topics, new topics for us, we're always open for those too.
Always.
We love interaction, so thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.